My name is Elena. I am 22 years old. I live in a beautiful old town where the streets are made of stone and the smell of fresh bread fills the air every morning. I live with my father, Thomas, my stepmother, Beatrice, and my stepsister, Isabella. My mother passed away when I was very young. She was a baker, and she left behind a small but famous shop called the Golden Bakery. My father loved her deeply, and for many years it was just the two of us. He taught me how to knead dough, how to wait for the bread to rise, and how to smile at every customer who walked through the door. My father was a kind man, but he was often lonely. When I was 15, he married Beatrice. I wanted him to be happy, so I welcomed her with an open heart. But when she moved in, the warmth of our home began to fade. Beatrice brought her daughter Isabella, who is the same age as me. Isabella is lazy. She spends her days staring at her reflection in the mirror, painting her nails, or complaining that the house is too small. She does not help in the bakery. She does not help in the kitchen. She does not even make her own bed. While Isabella is given silk dresses and expensive perfumes, I am the one who does all the work. My day starts at 4 o'clock in the morning. I carry heavy bags of flour that make my back ache. I clean the hot ovens until my hands are red. I wash the floors, I cook the meals, and I handle all the deliveries. My stepmother never says thank you. She looks at me as if I am a servant, not her daughter. Sometimes I feel invisible, like a ghost haunting the corners of my own mother's bakery. The conflict began to grow as my father got older. His eyes became weak and his hands began to shake. He could no longer spend 12 hours a day in the heat of the bakery. He started to rely more on Beatrice to manage the money. I noticed that Beatrice was always whispering in his ear. She would say, "Thomas, you are so tired. Why do you keep this old shop? We should sell it and move to a big city where Isabella can meet a rich man." My father would shake his head and say, "This bakery is Elena's future. It was her mother's dream." This made Beatrice furious. Her eyes would turn cold, like ice. She didn't want me to have the bakery. She wanted the money from selling it, so she and Isabella could live a life of luxury. She began her evil plan to make my father lose his trust in me. She wanted to prove that I was incompetent, lazy, or even a thief. First, she started hiding the shop's money. One evening, my father called me into the living room. His face was pale, and he looked older than usual. "Elena," he said softly, "Beatrice says there is $50 missing from the jar today. Did you take it to buy something for yourself?" My throat tightened. I felt a sharp pain in my chest. "No, Father, I would never steal from us. You know how hard I work." Beatrice stood behind him, a small, cruel smile on her lips. "Maybe you just forgot, Elena," she said. "You have been so distracted lately. Perhaps the work is too much for your simple mind." I realized then that she was trying to break the bond between my father and me. I started to work even harder to prove my worth. I stayed up later, I made more bread, and I kept every receipt. But the more I tried, the more Beatrice plotted. The tension reached a breaking point when the town mayor placed a massive order for the winter festival. He wanted 100 specialty cakes and 500 loaves of honey bread. It was the biggest order in the history of the Golden Bakery. If we succeeded, the bakery would be famous. If we failed, our reputation would be destroyed. "I will help you, Elena," my father said, his voice full of hope. But Beatrice had other ideas. "No, Thomas," she insisted. "You must rest. Elena says she is strong. Let her handle it. Isabella and I will stay in the shop to help with the customers." For 3 days, I didn't sleep. I lived in the kitchen. The smell of honey and flour was everywhere. I was exhausted, but I was proud. By the final night, everything was ready. The cakes were decorated with silver frosting, and the bread smelled like heaven. I placed them all on the cooling racks and went to my room for 2 hours of sleep before the morning delivery. While I slept, the evil plan was put into motion. I woke up at dawn and rushed to the kitchen. When I opened the door, the room began to spin. The air didn't smell like honey anymore. It smelled like salt and vinegar. My heart sank as I looked at the cakes. Someone had poured salt over the frosting. Someone had replaced the sugar jars with salt jars. Someone had even poured vinegar into the large vats of dough I had prepared for the final batch. I sat on the floor and cried. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. All my hard work was ruined. At that moment, Beatrice walked in. She didn't look surprised. She looked satisfied. "Oh dear," she said, her voice full of fake pity. "It seems you made a terrible mistake, Elena. You used the wrong ingredients. What will your father say? The mayor will be here in 1 hour. The bakery is ruined." My father came into the kitchen, followed by Isabella, who was wearing a new silk dress. When he saw the ruined cakes, his hands started to shake. "Elena, how could this happen?" "She isn't fit to run this place, Thomas," Beatrice shouted. "Sign the papers to sell the shop today. It's the only way to pay back the mayor for this disaster." She pulled out a set of legal papers and a pen. My father looked broken. He reached for the pen. I felt like I was watching my mother's legacy disappear forever. But then, I noticed something. Isabella was leaning against the counter, laughing quietly to herself. As she moved, a small white bottle fell out of her pocket. I recognized it immediately. It was the concentrated vinegar from the back of the pantry that we only used for cleaning the floors. "Wait!" I shouted. I grabbed the bottle. "Father, look! Why does Isabella have this in her pocket? And look at her hands!" Isabella's hands were covered in silver frosting, the same frosting that was on the ruined cakes. She had been so lazy that she hadn't even washed the evidence off her skin. My heart beat fast. I looked at my stepmother. "You did this. You made her ruin the cakes so you could force my father to sell the shop." Beatrice turned red. "That's a lie! She's just a clumsy girl making excuses." But my father was looking at Isabella's silver-stained fingers. He looked at the salt jars that were moved from the high shelf. He looked at the vinegar in Isabella's pocket. For the first time in years, the scales fell from his eyes. He saw the cruelty and the greed. "Get out," he said quietly. His voice was like thunder. "What?" Beatrice gasped. "Take your daughter and get out of my house and my bakery," Thomas said, standing tall. "You tried to destroy my daughter's heart to fill your pockets. You are no longer welcome here." Beatrice and Isabella left that same morning, shouting and complaining until their voices faded into the distance. They were gone, and for the first time in a long time, the house felt light and clean. The mayor arrived an hour later. I stood before him, exhausted and covered in flour. I told him the truth. I expected him to be angry, but he looked at my tired eyes and my red hands. He saw the ruined cakes and the effort I had made to save them. "Honesty is more valuable than cake, Elena," he said. "I will give you 3 more days. The festival can wait for the best bread in town." I worked for those 3 days with my father by my side. He didn't do the heavy lifting, but he sat on a stool and told me stories about my mother. We laughed, and the bakery was filled with love again. The order was delivered, and it was a massive success. The Golden Bakery became more famous than ever. I learned a very important lesson during those dark days. I learned that hard work and honesty are like seeds. They might be buried under the dirt for a while, but eventually they will grow into something beautiful. I learned that family is not just about the people you live with, but about the people who support your dreams. My father eventually retired, and I became the owner of the bakery. I still wake up at 4 in the morning, but I don't mind. I am no longer invisible. I am respected, I am strong, and I am happy. My father sits in the front of the shop every day, greeting the customers with a proud smile. We are a family again. We never stopped being one. We just needed to remove the shadows to see the light. If you felt this story in your heart, please like, share, and subscribe.